On this episode of Insight, how is love different when you find it later in life? Rebecca, after your long-term marriage ended in your late 50s, you tried dating apps. You met a lot of men, but they weren't good matches. Why not?
I was looking for more of a casual type of situation, and I think some of the men were maybe looking for a little bit more at that point in their lives.
So what were you looking for specifically, I guess?
Friends with benefits.
Friends with benefits,
Yes.
as in?
Booty calls, sex.
No commitment.
Yeah, sex with no commitment, yeah.
Just explain a little bit more what you thought the men were looking for.
A few of them were probably looking for something a little bit more long-term, definitely more than I was ready for at that point.
Wayne, you're in your early 60s and have been married twice. You were also on a dating app. What were you looking for?
Basically just company and sex. But
So not a lifelong commitment?
No. Oh, it's just someone to go out with, something close to home that didn't take a lot of travelling.
Were you looking for love?
No, not at all. No, love was way off down the track. No, not at all.
Have you been in love before?
Yes, yeah. My first wife, we were actually teenage sweethearts, high school and all that sort of stuff, and right through. She passed in 2004, leaving me with a couple of little kids, 5 and 7, and she was probably my first and my big love, sort of thing.
You said your first wife, so you had a second
marriage?
marriage?
Had a second marriage, but that didn't really work out how it was expected to.
Rebecca, Wayne's profile caught your eye. Why was that?
Well, mainly because he was only 8 kilometres away from where I lived. So I thought, jackpot, 8 kilometres, it's about a 10-minute drive. Yeah, this will be good. Yeah, and also I think his profile said that he didn't know what he was looking for. So I just thought, okay, well, seems like it could be a good casual type of arrangement. And he looked a bit interesting. Yeah.
Wayne, so you were a convenient match in a way.
Yes.
What were your first impressions of Rebecca?
Well, I was impressed, obviously. I just sort of thought, well, might be some bit of sex involved in this, and I think it was on Tinder, so yeah.
And you met at a local pub, right? Then she headed downstairs at one point. What did you think then?
Oh, I checked her ass out. And made it fairly obvious.
It was very obvious.
Very obvious.
Kat, you and Paul are from opposite sides of the world and you met in America 14 years ago. How?
I was in between touring gigs. I used to work in professional theatre, and I was staying with a friend, and I decided to go buy some salmon for dinner. So I went to the local grocery, and the running joke is that I went in for salmon and came out with a husband. They don't run that 2-for-1 special very often, but it was really kind of amazing because the time I was there was the busiest time of night for that department, and nobody came near us for like 20 minutes as we got to know each other.
Wow.
He asked for my number, I gave him my card, and apparently he promptly lost it.
Your husband, Paul, was visiting from Australia.
No, actually, he was living over there at the time. He had come over for a job opportunity that didn't quite work out. The fish guy was like his second job.
Why do you think you chatted for 20 minutes non-stop?
I always say he looked at me with those big, brown, beautiful eyes. He smiled that gorgeous smile. And as soon as I heard that accent, I knew I was screwed.
Paul, the chat went so well, you made a coffee date. How did that go?
It was the longest coffee date I've ever had in my life because that coffee date lasted 8 hours. And we just stayed there and just stayed there and just stayed there to the point where, we can't drink any more coffee. Let's just go for a walk or just go back to her place. And we just sat and just talked for 8 hours until basically I looked at the clock and went, I've got to go to work.
At that point, did you feel like there was something kind of special there?
Definitely. Very much so. There was just something about her that just gave me the old, okay, I just need to just pursue this and see what happens.
Kat, you and Paul fell head over heels in love, but 4 months later you became long distance. What happened?
I had actually, before I met Paul, started the process to work on a cruise ship with the production theatre crew. And I actually got a contract with a cruise line and was gone for 7.5 months.
Did you keep the romance alive over that time?
We tried. We did a lot of Skype, a lot of emailing, a lot of FaceTime, and it was interesting to say the least.
Tell us about the day after you got home.
Paul wanted to go for coffee at Starbucks, and I made him take me to breakfast at Denny's first. And we went to Starbucks. I didn't remember it, but he actually managed to get the table that we had our first date at, and he proposed.
Wow.
Yep.
So 7 months away, you just met each other, you come back, you proposed to at the same Starbucks.
Yep.
You were married 5 weeks later. What was that day like?
That was amazing. It was a small wedding, but you honestly could feel, you honestly got high from the love that you could feel in that room. It was intoxicating. And I remember at our reception, they wouldn't stop cheering when we came in. And I had at least 3 of my friends say to me, "Thank you for showing me that love is possible after 40.
Paul, just 10 days after the wedding, you left for Australia alone. Why?
Basically just to get our home organised back here in Australia. And I actually had said to Kat, you know, would you ever consider moving to Australia? And she said, would I ever have to deal with snow? I'm like, not in Adelaide. And she said, well, then sign me up.
Yeah, when can we
So
leave?
when can we leave? So, yeah, I took off and was getting the house all organised so she could then transition from America to Australia very, very easily.
Kat, when you were driving Paul to the airport to go back to Australia, you saw a sign on the highway. What did the sign say?
Let's be clear, if you like your fish guy, you can keep him.
Really? That's the sign there. So what did you think when you saw that sign?
I literally took it as a sign that the universe was like, this is going to be okay. I dropped him off at the airport, and it took me an hour and a half to circle back and get a picture of it.
Wow. Carolyn, you've described yourself as a free spirit from a young age. You left home at 16. Why?
I hated my parents, and like most 16-year-olds do. But yeah, I had the smell of freedom and went on the road with a rock band. I used to do lights. I had the whiff of adventure, and off I went.
In your early 20s, you formed a relationship with the band's lead singer. Did that last?
We fell in love, had a kid, and yeah, I spent my 20s and 30s with him. Yeah, and the wheels started coming off later on. I kind of had a child when I was 24, and I think that, you know, took me through that period without much thought. When you're a parent, you just kind of do life, and yeah, that's what I did.
What happened in your early 40s?
I was asking myself huge questions. I had everything in the world. I had the husband, the kid, the house, the job, played music. You know, I should have been happy. I wasn't happy. I went to my GP and said, what's wrong with me? You know, like I'm drinking and drugging a lot, like I'm not happy, I'm overweight. My GP had some wise words, which really changed my life.
Your GP suggested you go on a wilderness retreat.
Yeah, what happened was there was this really cool, you have like camp leader, and yeah, my camp leader was this 24-year-old young lesbian woman who I saw myself in. I saw her and I went, wow, you're just so cool. You are happy with who you are, and it just kind of blew my mind. And I think it was like it was almost, she held a mirror to me. And then they send you on a solo in the bush without a tent or anything. You just have a bivouac. And I cried and cried, and I thought, oh my God, I'm a lesbian. That's what's going on. That's what's going on with me. Like all the noise was gone, so I could actually hear and think.
Michael, you said the other kids at your country school knew you were gay before you did. How?
Kids pick up on the way that you speak, the way that you walk and move. I think one of my friends cautioned me once about the way that I was crossing my legs because people would start to think that you're gay. And I remember things like, you know, listening to myself in recordings and thinking, oh God, I sound so gay. And honestly kind of hating myself and hating that existed and that they could see it in me.
How were you treated at school?
it was pretty horrible. Being called names every day. It was being threatened to be hurt. It was being hurt. Sometimes I spoke to teachers about it and they would kind of say that I was calling it upon myself. Yeah, it was, I think it just kind of reinforced this notion that there was something inherently wrong with me and that whatever this thing was that I was feeling was not right. And so I kept denying it when I was asked and kept pushing it away.
What effect did that bullying have on how you felt about yourself?
I didn't want to be around anymore. But I was kind of really blessed with, I was blessed with a beautiful family who loved me regardless of anything. I was also blessed with some really beautiful teachers who had an arts program at the school where I found my people, and genuinely that saved my life.
Did you have relationships as a young man?
Well, I allowed myself to have relationships with women. I met and fell in love with a woman when I was quite young. I was 18. We had a child pretty early, and so I was in a relationship for a long time with her. I genuinely loved her, but I think on some level it was kind of like it was about shoring up. I was safe because, see, I'm straight because I'm in this relationship.
In your 40s, that relationship started to break down. What impact did that have on you?
Well, I was, between work and home, I kind of felt like there was very little space for me. And, as a kid, to get through some of those really challenging times, I'd go out in the back paddock and I'd make up songs and I'd kind of sing them to myself. And so music was the thing that helped me get by. And so I challenged myself one night to go out to an open mic night, and I'd been writing all these little songs and I started playing them and people enjoyed it. So that became the way of processing my feelings, but also a way of making me feel seen and valued by others.
You're 55 now and a country singer. Here's a clip from your song about struggling with your sexuality.
When you're young, you let the voices win. Learn to hate the love that you feel within. Learn to hate the sinner and you hate the sin. And you learn to hate your body cause it did you in. Hoping that something could make me well, or make it something I would outgrow. Praying some doctor could make some pill that could make all this wanting go.
Michael, you came out as gay 4 years ago. What else was going on for you at that time?
Well, it was around COVID. At the beginning of 2020, we lost our dad, and 7 weeks later, we lost Mum. And 18 months later, we lost my brother. It was a really tough time. But also, I had, towards the end of my brother's life, I had the joy of being able to be there and to see the love between him and his wife and his family around the end of his life. And I realised a couple of things in that moment, and one of them was that the love that he had for Tam was not the same as the love that I shared with my partner, and that I couldn't leave this life without being all of me.
You're here with TJ. Does this relationship feel different?
Absolutely, yeah. I fell in love very quickly because he is...
You fell infatuation very quickly.
Okay, well, maybe, but just such a unique human being. I don't know, it was like for my whole life, I've been looking up at the ceiling and thinking I was looking at the sky, and then walking outside one day and looking up and seeing the stars for the first time. And that's what it felt like the first time, yeah.
Wow. Kim, you were 41 and single when you met Rob. Were you looking for a partner?
No, I wasn't. I was not actively looking for a partner at all. I was in a really happy space in my life, and whilst I had gotten to the stage of feeling open to that as a possibility, I was not actively looking. I was invited on a school night to go out and go to a jazz club, and my friend had said that she was also having another friend come along, and I took my sister, and Rob was part of the group, and we met that night at Jazz Club.
What were your first impressions of him?
He was easy to talk to, he was friendly, I just felt like he had a good nature. He was approachable, he was personable. He did look a bit like my dad. He had curly hair.
Rob, what did you think of that?
You could have nightmares over things like that. It was a little strange, I must admit. I never sort of thought hang on, here's someone who wants to marry their dad. But
Similarity there.
anyway, that was a bit of a wee concern, I suppose.
You'd figured out that you'd grown up in the same town in Queensland. Did you remember each other?
No, see, we never met. We're in different circles. Kim was a year above me at school. And when she said her last name, there was a click.
Yeah, wow.
There was a person at school with that name. And then it all started to fall in that who she was. Her dad had a business in town, but her brother, he worked in hospitality. I'd worked in hospitality. Her brother sat next to my best mate for 5 years on the bus to school.
Soon after you met Kim, you were pretty upfront with her about some life goals of yours. What were they?
So, third date, I put babies on the table.
Wow.
It wasn't make or break if we couldn't have them, but I wanted the person that I wanted to be with to at least be open to it, because that was where I wanted to try.
And why was that so important to you?
I was 40, I suppose. I'd never had a child as a baby. I have a son. He's 34 now, and that was from a single interlude. And but I didn't know about him until he was 2.5, and I met him when he was 4. So I didn't have a baby. I never had that initial joy.
Kim, you were both in your early 40s. How did you feel about Rob wanting to have a child with you?
I was taken aback that he had raised that so early on in meeting. I had always wanted to be a mum. Ever since I was a little girl, I just wanted to be a mum. I had that maternal drive. But after my previous relationship breakup, I'd really thought that was off the table for me, and I'd kind of gotten past that, thinking maybe it's not going to happen for me. I didn't realise it was a possibility. And I did have some walls up. I did feel a little bit guarded, but we realised we were on the same page, and that was it.
Did you start trying for a baby?
No, despite being 41, I was a very traditional girl, so wanted to get married and first. We were engaged 12 months after starting to go out, married 4 months after, and then started.
Rob, did you expect Kim would fall pregnant easily?
Well, after my last experience, it was almost like a high five in the hallway and it would have happened. But no, I thought it was going to be easier than the path that we had, definitely.
Kim, you started IVF when you were 42. What was that like?
It's a common phrase that you hear, that IVF is a bit like a roller coaster, but for me I likened it to, I guess because we grew up at the beach, I likened it to just being thrashed around in really crashing surf. Right. It was like, a wave would come and knock you over there, and then you'd, get your breath again, and then another wave would come and knock you over in that direction, because so many different outcomes are possible each cycle that you're not expecting.
Terry and Cecily, you met in your late 40s. You were both married to other people and you both had kids. Terry, how did you two meet?
I had a delicatessen. Cecily, with her husband, had a restaurant. And so we used to sort of meet. We were friends, acquaintances. That's how it started.
Fast forward a couple of years. Cecily, by then you were divorced. How did your love affair with Terry start?
I asked for him for permission to borrow him for a function I was going to, and I got a yes. But during the evening I thought, I don't want to give him back.
You didn't want to give him back?
No. He was witty, he was charming, he was tall. I was getting butterflies, and I thought, nah. But it took a while.
Terry, so you had an affair with Cecily?
You could call it that, yes.
4 decades later, you're still together. Do you have a lot in common?
We're completely different. Absolutely completely different. I love sport, I love adventure, I've jumped out of planes and rode motorbikes around the world. Cecily is a little quieter than that, you know.
Yeah.
She can't ride a bike. No.
What would Cecily's idea of adventure be?
Definitely sitting on the back of a yacht with a glass of champagne in her hand.
Is that true, Cecily?
It is. I can't swim, I can't hit a ball with a tennis racket, so I have to have something going.
Cecily, you're 89 now, but on your 70th birthday, what did you tell Terry you wanted?
I wanted to get married. I thought it might be nice. And he responded,
What? What? You want to do what? It sort of came out of the blue. I was surprised and I didn't want to get married. We loved each other, but I just felt I had a lover rather than a wife, and that made me happy.
Was there anything that would have pushed you over to Cecily's side?
When she asked me, I said, definitely not. I said, but there are 2 reasons why I will marry you. And she brightened up a bit and said, oh, what's that? And I said, one, if you get pregnant. Remembering she's 70, so... And I said the other, I said, I'll marry you when I get to 90.
Rebecca, you and Wayne met on a dating app. You weren't looking for love, just friends with benefits. That arrangement shifted when you had some tests done. What were those tests for?
It was Wayne's idea to have the STD tests to make sure that we were both clear of any nasties, and they both came back. We both came back clear. So I thought, well, he's only 8 kilometres away. You know, we could just maybe just be exclusive friends with benefits. I kind of floated that idea with Wayne, and he was pretty enthusiastic actually to be exclusive friends with benefits. But
yeah, Wayne, how did you interpret that word exclusive?
Exclusive means a relationship. Well, it's exclusive. You just, that's it. But apparently I was wrong. The R word, as Beck used to call it, it wasn't on the table. Like it just wasn't there. We weren't in a relationship, even though we weren't having sex with anybody else, and it was just the 2 of us. That's not a relationship, apparently. So that was, yeah.
Rebecca, why did you have an issue with the R word, relationship?
I was very nervous about having another relationship. I'd had 2 really long-term ones, and I was enjoying myself, sort of just, you know, going out with the girls and going out with Wayne as well. But I definitely didn't think that we were in a relationship.
Not long after, a health issue changed things again. What happened?
By that point, I'd kind of accepted that we were in a exclusive relationship, and Wayne had to have a procedure done, and he was going to drive himself. And I said, I think you can drive yourself there, but I'm not sure that you can drive yourself home. So why don't you just come and stay for a night at my place? I'll, you know, take you there and come back, pick you up, and stay the night. So the procedure was delayed for a couple of days, which was fine. He stayed for the couple of days. The procedure was done, and then those days turned into weeks, and Wayne was still there. And after about 3 weeks, I asked him if he'd forgotten something, and he said, what? I said, have you forgotten to go home, Wayne? And he was pretty sure that he had been home, but he hadn't been home in 3 weeks, and that time kind of stretched on.
Wayne, was that intentional on your part? No. I honestly thought I'd only been there a few days, and it was just nice. It was just really nice, and it just, you know, one day just blurred into the next, and you know, time is an illusion. So it just sort of.
You were doing life together.
Yes.
Judy, you and Alex got together 30 years ago after both your marriages broke down. A health issue also led to you living together, but only for a short time. What happened?
That's when I got my new hip. I needed 6 weeks without driving. So from day one, I knew that I could move in with Alex, just 10 minutes down the road. and he looked after me very well.
How did you feel when you were there, living in his house?
Very comfortable. He has very strong views about everything.
Never.
And I just submitted, this was his house, his domain. I just did things his way.
Alex, you have had health problems as well. Did Judy look after you?
Yes, she was always there to back me up. We're very different too as well, you know, so it's...
Have you considered living together permanently?
It came up, but we had different views on where and how.
Twice.
Well, I'm a very different person. I'm half German, half Russian, so I should be on SBS, obviously. But my German side is I'm tidy and ordered, and Judy's a bit different. I won't say how.
So, Judy, you sort of twice had the opportunity to live together, but it was like, this is not working for us.
Those 2 times, we each had our own home, and at both occasions, we thought, should we come together? And we both said, no, it's much better. Just stick to our own.
So after 30 years together, you still live in separate homes?
We do.
Yeah.
Many Australians choose a lifestyle known as living apart together, or LAT. Here's Simon and Denise's story.
It feels magic meeting Denise. It was completely unexpected. It was a complete pinch yourself moment. Well, Denise and I met just after she had moved to Armidale.
At that time, we were both with other partners and we lived separate lives.
In March last year, we bumped into each other at Armidale Airport. We were both flying to Sydney to go and see a band live. I went up and said hi.
At that point, I was not looking for love. At the concert, I definitely felt a spark. There was definite energy.
She had glitter on her face. I remember just thinking, she's amazing. Yeah.
Finding love later in life is different because you've had a lot of experiences, good and bad, so you really know what it is you're after.
It's easy because there's respect.
This was the first time in my life that I had set a strong boundary in a relationship. I was adamant that I wanted us to maintain independence.
Denise mentioned the concept of LAT, living apart together, when we first met.
I told him that I didn't want to get married or live with a partner. I've got teenagers at home, I've got a career, so keeping our own homes and our finances separate. Surprisingly, he was agreeable.
Denise lives a kilometre away from me, so we're geographically very, very close.
For me, it's about spending quality time together. It's intentional.
I respect the idea of it, that you can have independent lives but come together when you want to. You can support each other and enjoy each other's company but have a separate household.
Judy, you and Alex live apart. Does keeping 2 separate houses work for you?
Oh, yes, yes. I love my home. It's my nest. I chose it with my adult children and it was wonderful. Why should I move?
Alex, what do you like about it?
I like my own space. Our political and religious views are all in line, so it's good. And then when we come together, it's better. If she wants to watch a TV program and I don't like it, I go home.
Kat, you and Paul were only just married when he returned to Australia. It was a year before you got your visa to join him. What was that time apart like?
Honestly, it sucked. It was really hard because we missed all of our firsts. Our first month, all the birthdays, holidays, everything. So when we started getting close to our anniversary, I basically said, I'm not going to miss that. I'm not going to miss our first anniversary. I started making plans, booked the flight to Australia, and I got the phone call from immigration saying, guess what, you've been approved. I said, great, because I'm showing up.
What was it like being reunited?
It was wonderful, but it was also, in a lot of ways, really hard. He was originally from Adelaide. It's where he had the majority of his relationship with his first wife. So he was, in a lot of ways, being haunted. And because he was caught up in that, I ended up feeling like, why am I here? Because we just weren't connecting. And I finally had to look at him and say, look, either get your butt into therapy and sort this out, or I'm going to have to leave because I can't do this.
What was that time like for you, Paul?
Horrendous. Really was. I mean, we were so in sync before I left, but then it was like, I've now got to relearn you. I've got to learn our routine. I've got to relearn how we connect with each other. And it was very, very hard in that. And also for the fact that, as she said, I was living in a city where my ex-wife and myself had lived. So I had to then try and work out places that I could go with Kat that I'd never been with her before. I did have to go to therapy, and I used to poo-hoo people and go, therapy, like, you can't work it out yourself, but you sometimes do need to give yourself over to somebody and say, please help me because I don't know what to do. So I had to learn to give that side of myself up and go, okay, I need to go and speak to somebody.
Carolyn, at 41, you acknowledged that you were gay and you told your partner of more than 18 years. What was his reaction?
Well, he wasn't very happy, and he didn't believe me. He said, look, I've known you for 20 plus years and I can tell you that you're not gay. And I said, well, I've known me for 41 years and I think I am. I think I actually have to do something about this. I was incredibly unhappy as well, and I just needed... I didn't have a person to go to. I never wanted to do that. So I think that made it hard for him to understand that maybe I needed to do this kind of exploration.
What was your son's reaction to you coming out?
Oh, well, I think my son was about 16 at the time, and he said to me, oh, Mum, I always knew you were gay.
Did he?
And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me,
You decided to travel the world and started seeing women. How was that time for you?
Well, yeah, I came out of a long-term relationship. I was a bit like a teenager, really. I was very uncomfortable. Travelled the world, went to pride events. It was like I was doing my bachelor's of lesbianism. I had to learn. There's culture, there's a lot that goes on with it. It's not just hooking up, there's a lot that goes with it. I found it very difficult because I couldn't read women. I had no idea, really.
Michael, you also came out at an older age. What was that like for you?
I have to say, I completely hear you. Teenager is exactly what it was like. I think TJ referred to it once like baby gay. Being reverted to being a teenager with the overblown emotions, everything was larger than life and such great vulnerability. And I suppose because I didn't go through that process that my straight friends went through, practising relationships with people that they were in love with as a teenager, it was like I was finding that for the first time in my 50s and kind of bumbling around like an idiot.
So is love different for you later in life?
Yeah, absolutely. I thought that I knew what love was before, but it was so much bigger and richer, and there was so much more of me that I was able to give. It was more than just an expression of my sexuality. It was a true expression of my love.
Kim and Rob, you married later in life. How's love different for you now, Kim?
I think I'm more settled. When I met Rob, he had all of the qualities that I was then looking for. Compassion, kindness, thoughtfulness, consideration. That list was probably a bit different in my 20s and 30s. It was probably a little more superficial when I was younger.
How about for you, Rob?
You're a bit older, so I knew, like, I put the babies on the table through everything. I know what I wanted. This is my path, and I'd like you to join it and walk with me. I don't want to go off it, I suppose. Well, open to go off it, but I suppose it was more so just that, yeah, I know what I want. Not cut out the bullshit, just here it is. This is who I am, what we're going to work. This is on the table. So being later, I think that, and I know I'd never had a relationship, like a long-ish term one. I think 18 months was probably, that was me box ticked. So, I'd found someone that I wanted to spend a long time with. And, yeah, I'd never felt that before.
Kim, you had 11 rounds of IVF. Was that successful?
It was. We were very lucky to have a daughter in 2017. She's 8 now. I'm very grateful that we were successful, did achieve a successful pregnancy. It's not always the case, and that journey is heartbreaking along the way. We're very happy and very grateful.
Rob, what's it like being an older parent?
Because I'd never brought up a baby, I'm the same as my 22-year-old mate who has just had a baby. But I think life experience is a lot different. I've lived a lot more of a life than, say, some of my younger father friends were.
You have a 34-year-old son. Did having your daughter affect your relationship with him?
No, I don't think it did. Something which he said, I think it was probably around 10 of IVF. And he said, I'm excited because I've always wanted a sibling.
Oh.
There's been no sort of, I suppose, issue of time or anything like that because he was an adult and he was out living, and as I spent most of my time with him probably when he was a teenager, and there was no distraction there. And so, and as he's gone out and started to live his own, there's no distraction when I'm with Addie sort of thing. It's a coherent.
Rebecca, you and Wayne both have adult children. What was their reaction to your romance?
Look, my daughter took it upon herself to do a role reversal and become the mother. So she started tracking me on the phone, Find My app, and rang me while I was in the car with him and said, what are you doing at the back of wherever it was we were? And I said, well, I don't really know. I'm out with this man and I think he's lost, and he also makes knives. So his job is a knife maker. So if I never turn up again, just pin that spot.
Wayne, how were your kids about your relationship with Rebecca?
My son's been good. When he first met Beck, or when he first found her, he just sort of, I think his words were, oh, another one, Dad. But when he eventually did sort of, I think he spent an hour chatting to you one day. And then he these days he calls her Beck Mama. Yeah, I think he's very happy. He's probably Beck is probably the only one that he's really sort of formed any sort of relationship with, I suppose.
Paul, how did your young son respond when he found out that you and Kat were dating?
First of all, I'd always said to my son that I was not going to date, wasn't interested, would never get married, so don't ever worry about it. And then I picked him up one day from school and we went out for a pizza or whatever, and he looked at me and he said, something's happening. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? And he goes, there's something different about you, you're happy. And I'm like, yeah, okay. And you can't, once a child knows that there's something different about you, you just can't get around it, regardless of how much pizza you give them to eat. And it was like, okay, well, I've met somebody. But I'd always said to him that I wouldn't introduce him to Kat until I was 100% sure that he was okay with it. And he was all for it.
For some children in blended families, their experience isn't always so positive. Here's Susan's story.
I was around 12 or 13 when my parents both repartnered. It was very, very hard. There was suddenly a new person in the home who I didn't think really even liked me. I was mad. I was angry. I felt like their choice to repartner so quickly was selfish. I felt like a third wheel in both of my homes. In the new dynamic, I wasn't really a welcome party. My father repartnered with a woman from Asia that was around 20 years younger than him. I do see my father's new partner as a potential financial threat, not only to me, but to himself as well. Now, with the housing market, the only way I could see myself really getting a home would be through some portion of inheritance, but I don't know if I'm now an afterthought because they have younger children that they have to worry about now from their second partnerships. I see my dad as part of an old family, I think the same way he sees me. So I don't think that I could rely on him like I could before. I think the thing that I learned from watching my parents' experience is that love is temporary. My relationship with my dad now is definitely strained. I don't think it will be like it was before, ever again. I worry that people might see my perspective as selfish, but I still think that my parents should have prioritized my stability over their happiness.
Paul and Kat, how do you feel about what Susan's saying?
She's definitely got some valid points, but on one half I do agree with her, but on the other half I look at it more along the lines of her father should have actually been a little bit more forthcoming with her. Instead of introducing this new woman, do it the way that I did it to my son. Are you okay with it? Let's take it one step at a time, rather than having her feel now like that she's been ostracised, because that could have easily have been my son, you know.
Are you looking ahead with wills and estate planning?
Definitely, I am. So I've made sure that he's aware that my bank accounts, my cars, everything that I've got in that home, including the home, it goes directly to him, and he doesn't have to fight anybody for it. He knows that he's set up, you know, for the rest of his life.
Kat, when you first lived together, you realised that you and Paul had a different approach to finances. How did you work that out?
I suggested a yours, mine, and ours. We have a ours savings and an ours bills account, and all of the bills get auto paid and they're out of that one account, and we just both make sure that there's enough money in there to cover it. We divvy it up a little bit, but we basically just make sure that all the money is there to cover the accounts, and that way I can feel safe knowing that the bills are paid. And once that's done, then whatever money you have left over is yours to do with what you want.
Rebecca, how did you and Wayne sort out the finances?
Well, we have decided to keep our finances and our assets completely separate for our separate children, wills, everything else. So, yeah, he pays for some things, I pay for some things.
Wayne, why did you want to keep the assets separate?
Oh, it just makes it easier. If one of us drops off the perch, it stops the shit fight at the end of the day, and that's it. Like, the other thing was my late wife. One of her things that she was really worried about was that I would get married half a dozen times, and at the end of the day, her kids would end up with nothing, or our kids would end up with nothing. That's always in the back of my mind as well.
Terry, you turned 90 last year. Did you deliver on your promise to Cecily?
I did. I did. So, in case any little kids are watching this show, you've got to keep your promises.
What was the wedding day like?
It was fantastic.
Here it is.
Lots of friends there, relatives, people from sporting clubs. The sun shone, and it was a magnificent day.
Cecily, I see you're wearing your beautiful wedding outfit here.
Yes.
It's absolutely gorgeous.
I decided I was too old to wear a frou-frou.
Did you have any butterflies on the big day?
Oh, yeah. Not anything regretful, but the emotion was pretty high.
And how were your friends and family on that day, Cecily?
Well, my son, because it was in the garden, my son walked me up the grass. That was a moment. And Terry dropped the ring.
No.
That was a moment.
I didn't drop the ring, I pretended to.
Anyway.
Terry, what's love like in your later years?
Peaceful. You're not producing children, mortgages, working very, very hard. You know, lots of my jobs were driving big trucks, working 14 hours a day. It's a peaceful life now. Our love was probably a very slow burn. It started off as, I think most of you, it all started in lust by the sound of it, you know. Well, ours was no different. And I think we like each other, love each other more as each year goes by.
Is there any advice you'd give to others, Terry?
There's no secret. There's got to be a lot of trust there, you know, a lot of trust.
And Cecily, what's the secret for you, do you think?
All financial and fiscal thing is trust.
She lets me pay the bills. That's what it is.
True. But it is trust, and it's lovely that, you know, Terry might want to go, let's go to England to visit his family. And we can do that without having any other commitments except together.
Each other.
Carolyn, after coming out as gay and exploring your sexuality, you met your now wife, LJ, who's here with you. Was it love at first sight?
Indeed it was. A friend of mine wanted us to meet, I think, and invited me over. Typical lesbian fashion. After football practice, I went there. And yeah, this person was sitting across the table, and very rarely this happens to me, but I just went like that straight away. I couldn't look at her. I mean, I didn't even know she was a lesbian. Like, I had no idea, but I suspected, but, you know, you never presume.
Did you have any concerns?
I asked her how old she was, and she told me she was 29 and I was 43. And I went, right, well, that's a no-go zone, that's not happening. And I thought about her every single day from there on. Just things like, what would she think about this when I'm seeing art, you know, in Paris or whatever? You know, I wonder what she would think about this. And she just started becoming part of my thought processes. And I thought, a friend of mine advised me, you know, she said, what you resist persists. And so I thought, okay, well, what I really should do is get to know this person. Then she'll turn out to be an idiot like everybody else, and that sort of intrigue will go. And that's what we did. We went and had coffee, very long coffee dates, very long walks to Clovelly and doing our thing.
How is love different for you now in your late 50s?
I think at this age, I'm less angry, you know, like when I was young, I was tearing around trying to find out who I was, and it may not look as good as I did, you know, once upon a time, but yeah, definitely I'm a better version of myself internally, emotionally, and I think that's a great thing for our relationship. Like we're just really chilled out together, we travel well together, there's no anxiety, there's no fear, there's just this beautiful cadence that we have.
Michael, 4 years ago you came out with your partner TJ at the Country Music Awards. How was that?
Well, initially a little terrifying. I'd been playing country music for a while, and I was worried whether or not the community would embrace us. We were getting ready for the awards. I'd been nominated for a couple of awards. TJ tested positive for COVID. I tested positive as well. I thought, oh no. At that stage, you had to isolate for a week. It meant that we were going to miss the Golden Guitar Awards. But when you're absent from an award ceremony like that, they ask you to record a speech just in case you get the award. Being the first gay man in country music to bring his partner to the awards ceremony. I won the award, which was really lovely, and so I was the only person. I didn't get to bring him to the award ceremony, but I got to bring him up on stage with me.
What was the reaction to you coming out like that?
Nothing but love. It was pretty beautiful to have that kind of support from that people, and you know, music still being there for me.
You got married last year. Did you have a honeymoon?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So we had this beautiful wedding with it was nearly 300 of our friends, so it was amazing. And then we went to South America.
You lost your mum, dad and your brother within a very short space of time quite recently. How do you think they would feel about the life that you have now?
My little brother walked me down the aisle.
Wow.
And gave us away on behalf of all of them.
Sorry to bring that
no,
up.
it's good because, you know, because grief's the price you pay for love, right?
Mm.
And I think one of my great regrets is that I didn't get to share all of me with them. And they didn't get to meet TJ.
Thank you for sharing that, Michael. Thank you. Rebecca, 3 years ago, you and Wayne started out as friends with benefits before moving in together. How's the relationship going?
It's going really well. Wayne, late last year, I've actually thought he was falling off the lounge or having a heart attack. But he was actually getting down onto his knees to do a proposal. So we got engaged. Yeah.
For someone who couldn't even contemplate the R word. How do you feel about that and sort of a relationship in your sort of second half of your life, I guess?
It's a lot easier than the earlier relationships. It's a lot more comfortable. I don't think we sweat the small stuff a lot. We have a lot of fun. We don't do date night things very much. We're a bit spontaneous, and Wayne brings a lot of fun and life into the relationship.
We bought a caravan.
Yes, we bought a caravan.
How's the wedding planning going?
Groomzilla. I would actually just be quite happy with a registry office and a dinner out. But Mr. Groomzilla here is not having any of that. He wants the
full thing.
He wants the white frock.
Wayne, you swore you'd never marry again. What changed?
Oh, I fell in love.
Would you recommend love later in life?
5 stars, yes.
5 stars.
5 stars, highly recommended. Love later in life.
Love it so much. Congratulations to you both. Have a great wedding. Thank you so
Thank
much for being here. Thank you to you all for being here. I'll see you next time.